Management Accounting C370, Unit 5 and 6 Summary. Considering about Inns et al. 2000, the research results suggest that adoption of activity-based costing has remained significantly higher among larger companies and among those from the finance sector. However, the proportions of activity-based costing users has dropped down over the 5 years, and users of activity-based costing judge that the financial benefits outweighed its costs, and the non-users of activity-based costing think the opposite. Whereas the perceptions of overall success of activity-based costing is closely related to views held on the success of specific applications like performance evaluation and improvement, and success is significantly associated with top management support for activity-based costing. So between 1987 and 1994, there was a considerable growth in activity-based costing adoption in the UK's largest companies. Considering about the drawbacks of activity-based costing, according to the Economist 2009, introduction of activity-based costing is not easy. Business activities must be broken down into their discrete components, and larger firms should try a pilot scheme before implementing the system throughout their organization. And the information for activity-based costing may not be readily available, and they may have to be calculated specially for the purpose. So this involves making new measurements. Large organizations often hire consultants who are specialists. So this is the view held by the Economist 2009. Considering about Jury 2015, Jury argues that activity-based costing is too simple and it lacks standardized cost definitions in local authorities, so therefore it's problematic. Considering about SIM 2017's viewpoints, SIM argues that activity-based costing fails to encourage managers to think about changing work processes to make business more competitive, and they do not conform to GAAP, that is generally accepted accounting principles, in certain areas. And also it does not encourage the identification and removal of constraints, creating delays and excesses. And also there's an overemphasis on cost reduction because of this reason, and this overemphasis happens without regard to the constraints that creates an environment for, it doesn't create an environment for learning about the problems and their management. And also the implementation of activity-based costing is very expensive. According to Cobb et al. 1992, the major problems experienced with activity-based costing relate to the lack of adequate internal resources. And Kaplan and Archer's 1994 argues that most implementation problems in activity-based costing are neither attributable to technical flaws nor to the way it's applied, but to the organizational issues like resistance. Whereas Ansel and Fellingham 1995 argues that economic rationale, political motives, and organization culture are related to the resistance to accounting change, whereas Kaplan and Archer's 1994 argues that the barriers to change arise from the defensive routines that participants trigger to protect themselves from experiencing embarrassment and threat from the new ideas. Considering about Atkinson et al. 2012, they argued that lack of clear business purpose is one of the key drawbacks of activity-based costing. That is, the activity-based costing project is initiated by the accounting and finance department. The project team builds the activity-based model, and then they become disappointed when no one else looks at or acts on the new activity-based costing cost and profitability information. To avoid this, all activity-based cost projects should be launched with a specific business purpose in mind. Also, overselling what the activity-based costing system is capable of doing should be avoided. Some project teams are carried away by the fact that activity-based costing will solve all of the company's costing and financial problems. But activity-based costing is a strategic costing system that highlights the cost of processes, cost and profitability of products. It's not a good system for providing short-term feedback on process and departmental efficiencies and improvements. Another drawback of activity-based costing that Atkinson et al. Points out is the lack of senior management commitment. If the activity-based costing system is implemented without senior management knowledge or without their commitment, the remainder of the organization also will not care about it. This can be solved by forming multifunctional project teams, which comprises of individuals from various divisions of the organization. So even if the senior management doesn't commit to this, the other divisions will be aware of it because of this combination of project team. And another drawback is the delegating the project to consultant. Due to outsourcing the project, activity-based costing has failed in certain organizations. Consultants may have considerable experience with activity-based costing, but they cannot build management consensus and support within the organization, either to make decisions with the activity-based cost information or to maintain and update the model. Successful activity-based cost projects require top management leadership and sponsorship, and also a dedicated multifunctional internal project team, not an outsourced or external project team. Another drawback of this activity-based costing system is the poor activity-based cost model design. Sometimes, even with strong management support and sponsorship, the project team gets lost in the details and develops an activity-based cost model that is both too complicated to build and maintain and too complex for managers to understand and act on. This problem can be solved by the project team by getting good advice from its senior management steering committee and by making good cost-effective design decisions along the way. Considering about the other point that Atkinson et al. Points out is individual and organizational resistance to change. This problem of activity-based costing arises because the people feel threatened by the suggestion that their work could be improved. This is because people feel threatened when a certain costing model can reveal the unprofitable products, inefficient activities and processes, and substantial unused capacity. This problem can be solved by recognizing and overcoming this defensive behavior. The skills that managers may not have been taught in their academic studies or in their early job assignments. Considering about the solutions to the problems of activity-based costing, according to the Economist 2009, one solution is to use activity-based costing software in conjunction with the company's existing accounting system. That is, the traditional system continues to be used with the activity-based cost structure, which will be called upon when specific cost information is required to help make a particular decision. Secondly, development of business accounting software programs has made the introduction of activity-based costing more feasible, so that's another solution. Considering about the practical application of activity-based costing, according to the Economist 2009, activity-based costing has been practiced in several firms practically. Moving on to Chrysler, an American car manufacturer, they claim that it saved hundreds of millions of dollars through a program that it introduced in the early 1990s. Activity-based costing showed that the true cost of certain parts that Chrysler made was 30 times what had originally been estimated. So this was a discovery that persuaded the company to outsource the manufacture of many of those parts. Considering about Atkinson et al. 2012, they argued that lack of clear business purpose is one of the key drawbacks of activity-based costing. That is, the activity-based costing project is initiated by the accounting and finance department. The project team builds the activity-based model, and then they become disappointed when no one else looks at or acts on the new activity-based costing, cost and profitability information. To avoid this, all activity-based cost projects should be launched with a specific business purpose in mind. Also, overselling what the activity-based costing system is capable of doing should be avoided. Some project teams are carried away by the fact that activity-based costing will solve all of the company's costing and financial problems. But activity-based costing is a strategic costing system that highlights the cost of processes, cost and profitability of products. It's not a good system for providing short-term. Considering about activity-based costing in service organizations, according to SIM 2017, service organizations have historically had problems designing accurate cost accounting systems because they have been modeling them based on systems found in manufacturing firms. So the emphasis of manufacturing firms on valuing inventory, which service firms do not have, has been one of the key problems. And using standard cost calculated for direct materials and labor, then direct material costs tend not to be major in service sector organizations, but still it's considered so. And it's difficult to calculate standard costs in service settings, and service organizations need to know accurate cost for product profitability analysis. So considering all of these factors, service sector needs to be forward-looking, and that is why activity-based costing becomes a useful tool for them. Also, a UK survey by Drury and Tales 2005 suggests that service organizations are more likely to implement ABC systems. Also, Atkinson et al. 2012 argues that although this activity-based costing had its origins in manufacturing companies, today many service organizations are obtaining great benefits from this approach. And in practice, the construction of an activity-based cost model is nearly identical for both types of companies, but in general service companies are ideal candidates for ABC more than manufacturing businesses. According to Kaplan and Cooper 1998, service sector organizations are ideal candidates for activity-based costing systems. But why is it so? It's because virtually all of the costs in service-based organizations are indirect and they appear to be fixed, whereas service organizations have few or no direct materials, and also many of the personnel in the service sector organizations provide indirect support to products and customers. Considering about Jury 2015's argument, they argued that service sector organizations must also supply most of their resources in advance, and fluctuations in the usage of activity resources by individual services and customers does not influence short-term spending to supply the resources. So such costs are treated by traditional costing systems as fixed and irrelevant for most decisions. So it resulted in a situation where profitability analysis was not considered helpful for decision making. Furthermore, previously many service organizations were either government-owned monopolies or they operated in a highly regulated, protected and non-competitive environment. So these organizations were not subject to any great pressures to improve profitability by identifying and eliminating non-profit making activities. So the cost increases will also be able to be absorbed by increasing the prices of services to customers. So little attention was given to the development of cost systems that accurately measure the cost and profitability of individual services. Considering about activity-based management, according to SIM 2017, activity-based management focuses on the management of activities as the route to improving value to customers. It involves activity analysis and performance measurement. It focuses on the improvement of business by re-engineering the way the business is conducted and by continuously improving the effectiveness of the organization. And it evaluates constraints like shortage of funds or capacity in an attempt to overcome these constraints and also to maximize the return to the shareholders. Considering about activity-based budgeting, according to SIM 2017, activity-based budgeting is one of the tools used in activity-based management. This is the process of planning and controlling the expected activities for the organization to derive a cost-effective budget that meets forecast of workload and agreed strategic goals. So an activity-based budget is a quantitative expression of the expected activities of the firm reflecting management's forecast of workload and financial and non-financial requirements to meet agreed strategic goals and plan changes to improve performance. But when is activity-based management used? It's used in the presence of top-down pressure to reduce cost, in the presence of competitive pressure, when benchmarking is introduced, when there's regulatory influence, and when improved peer status is sought through process management.